the plan simply is to take a look at these results and, well, also share my opinion and maybe hear your thoughts about that too. Now, let's start we got some top-level insights up here, but I'll actually scroll down and I'll go through that survey step by step, diving into the demographics here first, and maybe let's put this a little bit to the side here so that it's a bit easier to see with the chat going on. And because it's always interesting to see who actually participated there and who shared their opinions. Hi, Pankei. Welcome to the stream. Welcome everybody else, of course. So obviously, Stack Overflow is all about coding. So it's not super surprising that the vast majority of people who answered are developers by profession. I guess that is probably true for you too, and it definitely is also for me. The age is maybe a bit more interesting, but also no huge surprises here. It's roughly also what I have in my YouTube demographics, for example. I guess it is the main range we see for developers, most people being in their late 20s, early 30s. Country, also not a huge surprise. USA, number 1. Germany, my country, number 2. To be very honest, I would have expected India to be number 2. But I'm not sure if it's like Stack Overflow users in general are not that much from India as they should be, or if Indians just don't participate in that survey. I mean, I'm German and I didn't participate, so I don't know. But so far, no huge surprises. Education experience. Here we see 30% of developers learning to code have already attained a Bachelor of Science. I think that means, yeah, a degree. But we don't see here if people studied computer science, right? That is something that we might see later. So yeah, that is not too relevant. It's a years of coding. That's always interesting. And it's a nice mixture here, right? So we got some pretty experienced people. I would be in... Where would I be? Well, I guess depending on how you count it, I learned to code... well, quite a long time ago. Over 20 years ago, but I'm not working as a developer since then. So yeah, pretty broad mixture here. Also lots of relatively new people. I'm not new to coding. So most people have coding experience and are not super new. How did you learn to code? So that's the interesting part. How did you learn to code? Because I'm, for example, self-taught. I have not studied it. I don't have a computer science degree or anything like that. Though I will say this also doesn't answer if people have a computer science degree. I guess it just tells us how people generally learn. I'm not sure if that means how they learn to code for the first time. So how they learned it initially, or if that just means how they continue learning. Hi, Motes. So let's see, technical documentation, other online resources like search, forums like Stack Overflow. So that's interesting. Since it's a Stack Overflow survey, I would expect quite a decent share of people to actually use forums, boards like Stack Overflow. So it's not a huge surprise that this is number 2 here. No, sorry, I have to correct myself. Stack Overflow is a dedicated resource on 3rd place. But again, not a huge surprise that it's relatively high up there. And I guess that's very interesting. That will also be interesting next year. For the past year already, I would say a lot of people, or a decent chunk of people, may have moved away from Stack Overflow and may have moved towards using ChatGPT. Now here or similar AI tools. Now here in the survey, ChatGPT and AI tools, which I guess is this part here, is pretty high up. But I would almost expect that to basically surpass Stack Overflow next year. Maybe not in that survey, because obviously it is a Stack Overflow survey, but still, I would not be, I'm not surprised if it moves up. I'm certain AI will continue to move up there. Videos, not a course, but instead, I guess, YouTube videos, a solid 4th place. And that's also already interesting, because obviously I create YouTube videos, not so much tutorials anymore, because those don't work as well anymore, unfortunately. I love doing them. It's just like we moved past that, I feel like. But still, I find video for learning a very valuable resource. It always has been, and it's also always been the case that just video alone does not do the trick, in my opinion. But having a video where you can follow along kind of passively, be walked through a problem, that is a valuable way of diving into certain problems or learning certain things, I think. So I would imagine and obviously hope, since I create videos, for that to stay relevant. But I do think AI will move further up. Now, blogs, for example, that will be tough. Interestingly, here it's combined with podcasts, which is a different thing. But blogs, I feel like the blog part would move down, because we got AI that summarizes everything. It's in general a problem for the internet, right? So we use ChatGPT or Gemini and so on, and nobody visits the original websites anymore. Obviously, I'm exaggerating. Still, people are doing that, a decent chunk, of course. But it changes. It changes. Traffic is going down for certain websites, for a lot of websites actually, because people get their summaries on ChatGPT and so on. So blogs, I feel like, are super tough. I think AI is definitely going to hurt blogs, just as it's going to hurt Stack Overflow. Online courses, well, that is tricky. I create online courses, so of course I hope those do stay kind of relevant. And I think, just like videos, for the same reason as videos, they have their place, but obviously in conjunction with AI, not instead of AI. And I mean, it's perfect. You can go through a video, go through a course, and then also ask your follow-up or deep dive questions and AI. And so I think that is a good combination. I won't go through everything here, but it will be interesting to see how the ranks here change next year. Learn to code for AI. Over 36% of respondents learned how to use AI-enabled tools. So that's also interesting. I mean, you can also answer that in chat if you want to. Is AI something you're not using at all for coding? Do you use it all the time? Do you let AI write all the code? And hi, everybody, by the way, who joined. Great to have you on board. Would be interesting to hear your thoughts on this. I do definitely use it a lot, but I don't use it to generate all my code, instead really as an assistant. And it can be tricky to get the balance right. But it makes sense to see that a lot of people are using AI. So let's see what's the difference here. I learned how to use an AI-enabled tools required for my job or to benefit my career. Okay, so the first one is professional. The second one is out of curiosity or for hobbies. But around 70% of all people are using it. But that, of course, means that 30% are not using it. And I feel like that will also shift, because not using AI as a developer, you don't have to use it for everything, and I wouldn't use it for everything, but not using it at all feels like you're missing out on some valuable help. And for getting a job, I guess it will be essentially be almost like a required skill in the future. So yeah, we'll see. How did you learn to code for AI? AI-powered tools and applications are the most popular way to learn about AI. So how you learned how to use AI? I guess that means? Not sure. Yeah. Also not too relevant, I think. Developer roles, so lots of full stack and backend developers here. That is interesting. Where are my front-end people? is front here. That is really interesting. I wonder if that's a Stack Overflow thing or if my X bubble is just a total front-end bubble. But that is super interesting to see that here 40% of all respondents describe themselves as full stack or backend, whereas in X I see all the time front end and mobile devs, which is only 7% here. So I guess maybe Stack Overflow is still more relevant for full stack and backend. I'm not sure. Maybe because AI is better at answering front end questions, though in my experience it can also struggle with that. But yeah, really weird, really weird. Interesting. Yeah, everybody's full stack now. That may also be the reason. I mean, true. That's super interesting. It's a good point. I mean, it started when did it start? Like 4 years ago that we slowly saw that shift in front-end frameworks becoming full-stack frameworks. Like we had Next.js. We had that, I guess, in 2018 already or 17. I don't know. But it became bigger, more relevant. And then we got Remix in... I guess it became 1.0 got released in 2022. And we got Next for Vue, of course, also back in 2018 already. But all these full stack frameworks became more and more popular. So we had this huge shift, just as mentioned in the chat, that people would not just be front-end developers, but start building full-stack applications with their or on top of their front-end skills. So that's a good point. Yeah. Still, seems to be a relatively low number to me. Is Stack Overflow still representative for developers in general nowadays? Could imagine that AI somehow biases things. Yeah, Thomas, absolutely. I mentioned this at the very beginning, kind of. We had this... already dismissed it, but we had this traffic chart, right? So Stack Overflow has seen better days. And as I mentioned, the decline already started before ChatGPT, but it has gotten a bit steeper and has definitely not stopped since then. So you can definitely argue how relevant Stack Overflow still is. But for this survey, we have 50,000 respondents. Definitely biased, since, of course, you're asking a very specific group of developers. That is definitely true. But that makes it very interesting to me to dive into these results, to be very honest, because it's a bubble and a different bubble than I have on X, for example. I'm a self-taught, originally became a front-end team lead account manager after an internship after I lost a job in 2022. Since then, I have been going towards full stack and courses and more self-taught, going for a software engineer degree in September. I wish you all the best, Liam. Wish you all the best for that degree, and that hopefully that makes finding a job easier again. Unfortunately, it's never been a worse situation for developers finding or looking for jobs than we have right now, I guess, because we have so many things that are coming together, like that entire boom phase we had during the COVID years. That busted. We got the interest rates, which went up, which basically ended all the free cash in the companies. And and that's kind of related to the COVID thing, of course. And we have AI now, which still does not replace developers in the sense of it's as good as developers. I would argue it's not even as good as junior developers. And I'm really working a lot with AI. It's not like I'm never looking at it and just stating stuff. It can be very valuable for certain tasks as an assistant, but then it's super dumb in other cases, and it has no ownership of the tasks you give it. It can give you total garbage and it doesn't care. It can give you great code occasionally too. But it is there, and if CEOs are convinced that AI can replace 20% or 10% of their workforce, then these developers just aren't going to get hired. I'm sure the situation will get better again, but right now, unfortunately, it is not that great. There is no way to put it in any other way, I guess. Do you have suggestions for senior software engineers who want I guess, get into AI ML engineer roles. I have no experience with AI ML engineering. So building AI models and machine learning processes and so on. So I can't really share any valuable thoughts or insights on that. One-man army, that times now we have. Yeah, you can get a lot done now as a one-way army. Not just because of AI, but of course also because of AI, but because we're living in such a world where you have so many tools at your disposal, so many services you can use for free or low cost, so many libraries you can stitch together, and of course AI that can help with all of that can really speed you up. So yeah, that is definitely a good time for that. So let's continue. These are the roles, work experience. We had that before, didn't we? Yeah. Industry, software development makes sense. Let's dive into technology. Each year we explore the tools and technologies developers are currently using and the ones they want to use. That is one of the most interesting parts of the survey, I will say, to me at least. Well, it's not just how valuable AI really is for developers, it's also how its value is perceived, not just in hiring, but also in companies think they can get their software engineers cheaper. Yeah, exactly, 100%, Thomas. I 100% agree. That is exactly the case. If people are convinced that AI can do at least significant parts of the work software engineers can do, then they will hire less. And as you say, that also, of course, has an influence on what they're willing to pay, for example, or how they fill up roles that got available because someone left the company. So that definitely has an impact. Absolutely. So let's see. Most popular technologies. Programming, scripting, and markup languages. After more than a decade of steady growth, Python's adoption has accelerated significantly. I guess that is because of AI. It saw a 7 percentage point increase. This speaks to its ability, to be the go-to language for AI, data science, and backend development. So JavaScript, number one. Most popular, what does that mean? The question was, which programming, scripting, and markup languages have you done extensive development work in over the past year, and which do you want to work in over the next year? So it is kind of what you worked with, but also what you want to work with. So it's not you're not forced to use it, you want to use it, right? So there we got JavaScript number one, which is not super surprising. Again, we should keep in mind, we definitely have like the Stack Overflow bubble here. So ask a different community and you will get a different ranking. But JavaScript, of course, makes a lot of sense for two main reasons, I would say, because it has always been super popular. It powers the web. It can be used for backend and front-end web development. All these reasons. You can use it for building mobile apps. It's super versatile. It's also one of the languages many beginners get in touch with early on because they want to build websites, they want to build mobile applications. And AI also is pretty good at JavaScript. And spits out a lot of JavaScript code. We also got all these website builders which spit out JavaScript code. So that makes sense. And for the same reason, HTML, CSS makes sense. I would argue nobody really likes working with HTML and CSS, or not a lot of people. Not because they're super horrible, but I mean, HTML, it's just markup, and you can actually You could get quite good at HTML because you could really try to use the right tags for the right purposes. But then again, we all just use divs, right? So that's what it is. And CSS gives you lots of features. CSS now is nothing compared to what it was 6 years ago. It's much better, much more capable and powerful now. Like 6 years ago, you could do way less with CSS. But then again, who's writing pure CSS? Some people definitely do. I would kind of love to do it more, but then again, I'm also using Tailwind because I'm just more productive with it. And I'm missing out on certain features or optimizations I could do with just raw CSS, but it is what it is, I guess. I'm happy to see SQL top 3. SQL never leaves. A lot of full stack devs don't know SQL. We are all full stack dev really 100. Are all full stack developers really 100% competent in both area with front and back? And no, I mean, you can call yourself a full stack developer and barely know anything about the back end or the front end or both, right? And I guess you always have like a strong suit, one area where you're better. So yeah, SQL number 3, that is interesting. Makes sense if we keep in mind that earlier we saw that a lot of the people who replied here in that survey are backend or full stack developers, and chances are high that you then maybe also write some SQL. You might be using some ORM or some library, but then again, you still might write a custom SQL statement from time to time. And then, of course, we got all the data science people who also write SQL. Nonetheless, I wouldn't have necessarily expected it to be number 3. But SQL, I will say, I learned it also like 15 years ago. I always liked writing SQL. I'm not super good at it anymore because I don't do it as much. I don't write super complex statements at all, pretty much. I used to write quite complex statements back then. I had a job in a bank where I needed to build a custom solution and write quite complex statements. Not sure how performant they were, but they were complex. And I tried to also like make them performant, obviously. But yeah, I like SQL. I like it. I think every developer should know some SQL because we tend to just reach for an ORM or a library in general that abstracts it away from us. And there is nothing wrong with it in general. But SQL isn't that hard, especially all these basic CRUD operations, right? And if you need more complex combinations, from time to time, you'll need to write them yourself anyways. Of course, AI can generate pretty good SQL. Nonetheless, understanding it really isn't that difficult. And yeah, so that's that. Python makes a lot of sense to be up there. It always has been popular. It's a very popular language for beginners, of course. And it is like the go-to AI language. AI also spits out a lot of Python. All the people that are asking for some utility script that finds all the MP4 files and all the subfolders and renames them, all those people will very likely get Python code generated by AI. So it makes sense that some of those people maybe also want to dive a bit deeper into Python and understand it. And I personally have to say, I've never written as much Python code and read as much Python code as I did in the last 12 months, probably. I've never been like a super big Python developer. Always did it a little bit, built some web projects with it years ago, but I've always been more of a JavaScript person. I still am, but Python, I've done a lot of Python development over the last year. So yeah. Bash shell. I know I could look up last year's results too. I mean, can I just copy that URL and replace the number here? Does this work? It does. So last year, that may be interesting. Last year, JavaScript, so Python was before SQL last year, but the percentage was lower. TypeScript, Bash shell. So Bash shell was 34% last year. Now it is 49%. That may just be a coincidence. Maybe also because the demographics and the number of respondents changed. But I could also, again, kind of attribute that to AI, making it a bit easier to write Bash scripts because you don't have to learn that from the ground up. You can just have AI generate scripts for you and then have AI explain those scripts to you or explain scripts other people wrote and then tweak them. So makes a lot of sense for me too. And again, I haven't written a lot of shell scripts in general, but I've also probably written more or generated and analyzed and adjusted more shell scripts over the last 12 months than I did before. Or in other years, I should say. By the way, I'm reading all those comments and questions. I will try to get back to all the questions later. Just want to continue going through that list here. SQL is still powerful with basic search queries. Yeah, SQL is awesome. I don't share Uncle Bob's opinion on SQL, I guess. Do you think PHP is underrated? I'm not sure if it's underrated because PHP is getting used a lot. PHP powers like what, 70% of the web with WordPress mainly, and then of course much smaller, but we also have like Laravel, super popular library or framework. But it's definitely underrated in the entire front-end JavaScript bubble. And I guess that's why it sometimes feels like not a lot of people are using it. But PHP is an amazing language, of course. And PHP is, I'm not sure about you, but if you're around my age, so 36, I'm 36 years old, I guess we all got into web development with PHP back then. That would be my guess. I mean, when I got into web development in the early 2000s, it was like the LAMP stack, where you had like PHP and you had your Apache server and you had like your MySQL database and so on. So you had all these things, and we all got into programming or web development with PHP, and it still is. It's a fast language. It has, like, with Laravel, obviously an amazing framework that makes building full stack applications a breeze. So probably more people should give PHP a try. But then again, I also haven't written any PHP code for the last, I don't know, 7 years, 8 years. And I used to do a lot of Laravel PHP development. I've done a lot of that, but yeah, I switched to the JavaScript world. But yeah, back to list. TypeScript number 4, not number 4, number 6, I guess. Makes sense with JavaScript being number 1. TypeScript has always been a great language, and it over the last years, even before AI, TypeScript has steadily climbed the ranks and has been super popular and has become more and more popular. And now with AI, I would argue TypeScript is even more important than ever, because AI is not just good at generating TypeScript code. TypeScript especially also helps AI validate the code that it wrote, at least to some extent, because all those type errors can be caught by AI tools like Cursor and so on, and it can then use these error messages to improve the code, which does not happen if you would have pure JavaScript. And I have it all the time that I use AI in certain TypeScript projects, and it generates some code, and then there are some type errors in the code, and it goes back and fixes those. And if it were not for TypeScript, I would run into these errors whilst testing it. No, I'm 36, by the way, not 46, 30, 3-6. Not 4-6. Yeah. So yeah, that's why I probably look a bit younger. I'm 36. So yeah, Java is like Java is like that language which also, at least here in Germany, lots of people learn Java in college or university. I used to learn some Java like many years ago, and obviously Java is like a powerhouse in enterprises, right? So in companies, it's powering lots of systems and software. Same is kind of true for C#, of course. C# also may be popular amongst game developers because of Unity, and Godot also has C# support, obviously. C++, one of the most, maybe in general, the most programming language, important programming language in the world. Obviously also for game development, but also for lots of low-level system software, and yeah. So that all makes a lot of sense, and I won't go through the entire list, otherwise we'll spend the entire live stream just on that list. One thing or a couple of things I want to note is that Go and Rust are kind of, well, they're, I guess, in the upper half, not directly in the middle, but not super way high up there. Like Rust, Rust is a difficult thing because on X, in my bubble, like 2 or 3 years ago, when it was still called Twitter, and also in the early X days, it felt like Rust was the coolest language you could learn. There was no way around Rust. And by the way, I like Rust. I learned Rust like 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago. Not using it a lot, definitely not good at Rust, but I like it. I like learning it. I liked dabbling around with it. Yeah, I like Rust. Maybe I wouldn't like it if I had to build more complex software with it. That is possible. But nowadays, it's all about Rust hate on X. It feels like everybody's hating on Rust now. And if you like Rust, you don't know what you're doing, right? So I find that funny. Don't know what to make of it. I like it. I haven't built anything significant with it, so I can't judge how annoying or good or bad it is at that. I think like its advantages are pretty appealing to me. So yeah, makes kind of sense for it to be in the upper half. It is probably still a niche language, not used all the time for everything. Though, for example, a lot of web development tooling is written in Rust to get these speed advantages, like Evan You, the creator of Vue, who's building all these JavaScript build tools and an entire ecosystem of build tools and linters and so on, powered by Rust. So yeah, it has its place, especially in the web development community, I would guess. But yeah, again, it's kind of a strange relation. And then Go, Go is that funny language, which I guess a lot of people, it feels like, don't like Go. And I will admit, I also have my problems with Go in certain areas, like the boilerplate error handling approach can really be annoying. Some syntax choices I don't like. I'm a person who, by the way, I give a lot about the syntax of a programming language. If it doesn't read nicely to me, if I don't like the syntax, I'm out. And Go is somewhere in between. I like some parts, don't like others, but in general, it's a great language because it's much simpler than Rust to learn and write, I would argue. I have written way more Go than Rust, though, I will say, so maybe that would change if I had more experience with Rust. But I find Go simpler, and it's a super fast language. So if performance is like super important for what you're building, Go can really be worth a closer look, though we also shouldn't overdo that entire performance thing because we're not all building applications that need to be able to serve hundreds of thousands of users per second. Most of us don't need that, and you don't need to plan for that on day one, because if you ever get to that scale, you have plenty of time to adjust your tech stack, just saying. But yeah, I like Go, I like Rust. I maybe even like Rust a bit more than Go, but I'm happy to see both in the upper half. I guess that's what I'm saying. And then, yeah, we got some interesting things. GD script from Godot. Yeah. Mojo, wasn't that this Python thing, that Python machine learning optimized thing, or C++ in Python, or I don't know. It was something about Python being more performant. Well, not in Stack Overflow's world, I guess. Sig, also interesting. A language I would like to get into. Not too popular on Stack Overflow, I guess. PHP is an amazing language today. Great syntax and standards and Laravel Composer. Yeah, 100% agree. We got the same age, Mochaccino then, yeah. I got into programming in 2006. Yeah, I got into programming, I think, like 2001, 2000, somewhere around that. I thought after US government recommending Rust, it would skyrocket. Well, maybe it was because the US government recommended that it did not skyrocket. Just joking, though. Node.js or PHP for backend, what would you choose? I would really choose what you're better at, because if you just want to build something, I would not bother learning something new if you already know one of the two. If you don't know one of the two, maybe PHP is the better choice because of Laravel, because Laravel is an amazing framework that makes building backend or full stack applications a breeze. And in the Node.js world, you have to, well, pick and mix a bunch of libraries, which can be a bit more difficult, I guess. But then again, I am a Node.js JavaScript developer mostly, so yeah. I would always pick Node.js because I'm just way better at that than PHP. But if you don't know either of the two, maybe PHP is a better choice, to be honest. Are all these languages meant to last? Well, that is the big question. I guess technically they will last, but then again, we have languages like, where is it? COBOL, which is like almost the last language here in this list, but COBOL still powers a lot of banking systems, at least in Germany. So it definitely is a language to last, and you can, I guess, earn a decent salary as a COBOL developer if you make it into one of these jobs, because there are so few of them, and some systems still depend on it. So yeah, but obviously we also got some languages which may find it a bit harder to stay or become relevant. But like these languages here, right? These are definitely relevant. Obviously, assembly is relevant, but not a lot of people are writing it, I would say. But yeah, Swift, obviously super relevant. Not a lot of people are using it here, but Swift is, of course, a super important language if you're doing mobile iOS development and you're not going with Flutter or React Native. And even then, knowing some Swift can definitely help you. Yeah, I read the news that the Laravel IDEA plugin for WebStorm, for PHP Storm is now available for free. That's pretty exciting, yeah. If I were to get back into Laravel, I would definitely give PHP Storm and that plugin a try. Because I used PHP Storm 7-8 years ago when I was writing PHP and Laravel all the time. And it was an amazing IDE for that. Hey Max, you mentioned multiple times that you're gonna stream Astro. I'm waiting for it. You are so right, Mostafa. I'll try to remember that, because yeah, I wanna do that. That survey got released yesterday and I wanted to talk about that. But Astro is, I'll write it down. It is definitely planned. I promise. Because Astro is an amazing framework. Have you tried C#.net? Yep, C#. C# was... So I got into programming and writing code around 2001, 2002, not sure, with JavaScript actually. And JavaScript back then was nothing like it is today. And then came PHP. And then I had like a pause when I went to university where I studied business administration. And then after that pause, I got back into development with C#. So yeah, I did it. I did use it, not with .NET though. Instead, for building desktop applications with, I forgot the name, what the framework was. And I want to get more into game development in the future, and I'll probably learn C# for that too. Yeah, and by the way, I agree, Laravel and Inertia is a pretty good combination from what I've heard. Because fun fact, even though I don't write any PHP code anymore, I always watch all these Laravel conference videos, the keynotes, and I'm always super excited about what they're releasing and all the new features they're shipping to Laravel, or how well it now works with, for example, Inertia and so on. And I always get super excited and feel like, oh, I want to have that in the JavaScript world too. But I don't. But we have good frameworks there too. But yeah, I'm always excited about that. So databases. Again, which database environments have you done extensive development work in over the past year, and which do you want to work in over the next year? PostgreSQL, that is not a surprise. It's in my X bubble as well. Super popular. I guess that means that next year it won't be popular anymore, but I'm just joking. PostgreSQL and MySQL, of course, too, are great database engines. I've worked with both. Can't say much about them. I mean, MySQL is what I got started with, as I mentioned earlier. I installed it locally on my system. Nowadays, with Docker, it's super easy to spin up like a PostgreSQL or MySQL server, run it on your system, shut it down when you don't need it anymore. It's so easy. And yeah, PostgreSQL, super performant, lots of features, lots of supported data types. So really great. SQLite is the engine, if you want to call it like this. I guess you can call it like this. I want to give a shout out to, because I feel like to many people, SQLite feels like the database you use during development, right? Or the database you can use if you're building a mobile app, because in both on Android and on iOS, you can access a locally running SQLite database. But actually, SQLite is an amazing database solution also for production. Now, obviously, it is absolutely possible that you're building an application where SQLite is not a great solution because you have that large of a scale where SQLite doesn't work that well for you anymore, or because you need certain features, certain data types that are not supported by it. SQLite, of course, just in case you don't know it, is really just one file on the file system, which is your database. And then you have the code that interacts with that file and that efficiently queries it or writes data to it and queries and plans those queries. So you get the database engine essentially as code that's embedded in your application. That's how SQLite works. It's not a standalone database server you spin up. It is just code in your application, not code you wrote, but of course code by the SQLite developers, or you can use alternatives like libsql, but it's code you embed in your application, and then it's just in one file. And of course, that has a lot of advantages too. It can have disadvantages, not going to argue about that, but it can also have lots of advantages that all your database is in one local file, because that can make certain things easier, not just during development, but also in production. And you can always, of course, switching databases, even if it's from SQLite to PostgreSQL, is not super trivial, but you can always switch if you need to. And I feel like SQLite often unfairly has that development-only database touch, which it definitely isn't. So makes sense to have the SQL trilogy here, or actually 4 SQL databases on top. Redis, obviously very powerful for caching as an in-memory database for all the use cases where you might need that. MongoDB is an interesting one. Again, I feel like MongoDB was the hot thing 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It was all about MongoDB, and it was all about how SQL databases can't compete with MongoDB. And MongoDB, I will say, is still a pretty good database, or obviously it is. It still is way better than many people make it these days. MongoDB has certain advantages over those SQL databases. It always had. Scaling can be a bit easier, though that, of course, is typically not the main issue you face these days. You need to go to a very high scale to maybe have to think about those problems. But MongoDB and its schema-less approach, which it kind of has, can be a great choice for certain applications. And let's be honest, you can build any application with a SQL database or with MongoDB. You can always find arguments why one is better than the other, but if you like one over the other, if you feel like it gets the job done better for your specific problem, for your specific application, then there's nothing wrong with it. It's just always funny how that always changes over the years, right? So 6 years ago, MongoDB was best. Now it's not so good anymore. And yeah, I'm happy to see that it's still got a solid, 6th place here, because it is a great database. It always has been. But again, it makes sense that all these SQL databases rank at the top, because SQL is great. I mentioned it before, and so are the database engines. And SQLite is my secret champion, I guess. DynamoDB, AWS solution for having a non-SQL database. Kind of surprising. 10% is not a lot, but then again, it is pretty niche. But yeah, I guess AWS is a big cloud provider, and it makes sense that probably a decent chunk of AWS customers go with their own database to get the best possible performance and to some degree ease of management, and yeah. So that makes sense. Cloud Firestore only 0.7% above. Oh yeah, that is interesting. You're right. So Cloud Firestore and Firebase Real-Time Database are, of course, the database offerings by Firebase. Firebase sounds like it is the database, but Firebase is really just a service provider that has a broad variety of services, including file storage. And maybe you heard the news a couple of days ago about that Firebase public bucket, which was publicly available and which got hacked, even though it didn't get hacked. It just wasn't protected. Anyways, Firebase has lots of offerings, and they have these two database offerings. Maybe they have more these days, I don't know. But they have these two database offerings. The real-time database has been around forever, and the Firestore is newer, but it's also already 7 years old or so. Both are NoSQL storage solutions. And yeah, I agree. It's interesting that Firebase real-time database is almost as popular as the Firestore here amongst Stack Overflow developers, because Firebase heavily advertised and still advertises to use the Firestore and not the real-time database. But then again, the Firebase real-time database has the advantage that it's really easy to get started with, and that may be one reason why it's getting used a lot. Fun fact, I'm actually using it a lot in my courses, or I used to use it a lot in my courses. Nowadays, I typically use SQLite because it can be set up locally. You don't need an account. But I used to use the real-time database a lot because it gave you a REST API on top of that database automatically without any setup required, essentially. And therefore it was a great solution for something like my Angular course when I needed a dummy backend, because all people needed to do was create an account with Firebase and then for free, without a credit card, get such a database and that REST API on top of it without writing any code. So that was always a great dummy backend solution. Yeah, Google was dumped naming two different services so similar. True, the naming is really confusing. And it's especially confusing since the company is called Firebase, which sounds like it's the database already, but then it's just a company that has different databases where one database carries Firebase in their name and the other doesn't. So yeah, really weird. Cloud development. Which cloud platforms, containerization or orchestration tools, package managers, and so on have you done extensive development work in? So, no surprise, Docker, number one. Around 3/4 of developers are using Docker, and that makes sense because you can use Docker for so many things. Obviously, for deployment, and I would argue that most, I guess, deployments do utilize Docker because it has all these advantages of at least reducing the risk of stuff breaking suddenly once it leaves your machine. I mean, it runs exactly on a server as it ran on your machine with Docker thing is not 100% true. Because if you have a different architecture on your machine than you have on the machine you deploy to, stuff can still break. You may still implicitly use certain resources that are available on your machine and not on your VPS, for example. But Docker helps a lot with reliably executing code in different environments. And then again, Docker, of course, has another huge advantage. You can also just use it to, for example, spin up a PostgreSQL database on your local machine without installing a separate engine and like polluting your machine with it. Instead, you can just spin up a container. The database runs inside of it. You can shut down the container and delete it once you're done, and it's all clean, and you don't have to worry about going through setup steps and so on. So that obviously is another major reason, I guess, why Docker is so popular, because it's not just great for deployment, but also really just for running stuff locally on your system without installing it. Whoops. That's great. By the way, Docker has also really or is pushing towards towards running large language models on your system here with the Docker model runner. We'll see if they pursue this, if they spend a lot of energy on that, but it seems like they really also want to make it simple to run AI models, open AI models, large language models on your system with ease, basically as an alternative to Ollama. So that might be yet another reason for Docker being useful and helpful. NPM, obviously, since JavaScript is super popular, NPM also kind of needs to be super popular because it is the de facto standard for installing packages. You can, of course, also use Yarn or PNPM or Bun, but it makes sense. I guess most people still use NPM. It ships together with Node.js after all. It's a weird list because then all of a sudden we got the cloud services in there. And I mean, Docker and NPM are tools. AWS is a service. Anyways, AWS, no surprise, biggest cloud service provider in the world, has a service for everything. You can probably get them to wash your dishes. So many services do they have. It can be super complex, but it also, allows you to outsource almost every aspect of doing anything related to web development or to running a web service or anything. I mean, you can use it for queuing, for sending emails, obviously for hosting your web application. You can do it for lots of security screening, to spin up a firewall in front of your services that are running there, for hosting static sites, storing files there in the cloud. I mean, you can do that with other providers too, but AWS was kind of first. They have been pushing ahead aggressively. They're launching new services all the time, which can make using them a bit complicated, but it makes sense to see them up there. And I like working with AWS. I got all these AWS certifications because I really, maybe it's weird, but I really enjoy diving into all that AWS complexity and cutting through it. And I had a blast learning for all these certifications, including the most difficult ones. So yeah, I like it. Pip, obviously the Python tool, though. Do we have UV in there? Maybe later in another list. Pip, obviously Python's package manager, just like NPM makes a lot of sense. But I will say for Python, I would really recommend diving into UV, which is an alternative to pip, which makes installing Python packages, managing Python packages, and managing entire Python projects easier. Though I will admit I'm not the world's biggest Python developer, but last year I did quite a bit of Python development and I enjoyed using UV for that. It made certain aspects simpler than they were previously with pip. I'm also not using NPM anymore, typically. Instead, I'm using Bun for that mostly. Kubernetes makes sense in conjunction with Docker for managing more complex services that consist of multiple containers that need more complex architectures. Now, of course, most websites and web services you're building might not need Kubernetes, but it can definitely help with, building these more complex systems and making sure that different parts of the system can depend on each other and get their health checked and so on. So yeah, makes sense. Microsoft Azure, obviously number 2 after AWS, makes sense to be up there too. Homebrew is that fun tool, which I guess nobody likes, but we all use it all the time to install stuff in our system without understanding why we mostly see errors and warnings, and nonetheless stuff got installed. But yeah, that's Homebrew. I think I rarely have a Homebrew installation process that finishes successfully, but nonetheless, in the end, I have the tool installed, so that's fine. Vite. Do we have Webpack in there too? We don't. Kind of weird because, I mean, Vite is not a perfect replacement for Webpack. It's kind of different, but then again, Webpack is a competitor, or Vite is a competitor to Webpack. But yeah, Vite has been getting more popular over all these years, and Vite is an amazing tool for building front-end or in general web applications, JavaScript-based web applications, I would say. So yeah, Cloudflare, pretty great cloud service provider that's a bit different from AWS and so on. They have a lot of services that are similar, but then also a different approach for certain other problems, or they offer solutions to certain problems AWS might not offer solutions or might offer more complex solutions. But I am actually getting more into Cloudflare right now, so I don't know enough about it yet, but I know that it is quite popular, so also makes sense. There's Webpack. Okay, yeah. Wheat ahead of Webpack. Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Just saw it. Yeah. Cargo, Rust's package manager. So we got, yeah, I guess that's the same number as Rust developers, right? Firebase, I'm not sure. It's not really a tool. I guess that's the Firebase CLI, which you use for certain tasks, but I find that list to be a bit weird. It's really a weird mixture of everything, I feel like. Here's Bun. Yeah, I mean, Bun for package management, I guess, because Bun is really also an alternative to Node.js, and it's a weirder list. Yeah. But yeah, that's that. Web frameworks and technologies. That's the interesting part. Well, again, kind of weird to have like Node.js in there, because Node.js is not really an alternative to React, for example. But I see why that's the case. I mean, yeah, do I? Kind of weird to have Node.js here. But it makes sense that Node.js is up at the top if it is included in the list, because obviously Node.js is not just, yeah, you're right, Firebase has hosting, by the way. You're right. Since AWS is in there, it makes sense to have Firebase in there too. But yeah, back to Node.js. I guess it makes sense for it to be there if you do put it into the list, because obviously you can use Node.js for building your backend or full stack applications, but then you can also use Node.js to run your utility scripts and so on. And you will implicitly use Node.js in pretty much every web project, in every project that uses some JavaScript code at least, because all these bundlers and so on are typically powered by Node.js. Now, not all of them. As I mentioned, Evan Yu, the person behind Vite, is building a suite of tools that actually use Rust, but even these tools probably have some Node.js interface to, well, bundle your files, to lint your files, to compile your TypeScript code and so on. Yeah, but Node.js isn't a framework, exactly. React, number one, and I mean, that's something I also created a video about. Actually, let's go here. I created a video about that. Where is it? I should create a new video again. It's been 13 days. Where is it? The default stack. The problem I see is that with AI, we have like, AI always suggests the same kind of technologies, right? So if I ask an AI tool to give me a web app that does certain things, it will either give me vanilla JavaScript or it will give me a React app. Maybe it will also use jQuery, but I haven't seen that too often. It will almost never give me an Angular or a Vue app. So I think with AI, the things that already were popular will get way more popular because AI will suggest it all the time. And then we have like that circle, because when AI suggests something all the time, it will get even more suggestions in the future, because the future trading data will probably include more React examples, for example. So yeah, now, not to say React, of course, is a great framework, library, call it whatever you want. I'm not saying that it's not good. It is. It is really a good library and framework. I'm just not too happy about the fact that AI seems to reduce the variety in technologies. And I know we all had like framework fatigue, where we had like a new JavaScript framework coming out almost every week, and that was annoying too. But having only one framework or library that's being suggested for almost all situations is probably not ideal either. jQuery, by the way, is interesting. It's probably not so much because of AI, but for one, jQuery, just like PHP, is on more websites than you might think. Really also because jQuery is not as bad as some people make you believe it is. Now, I will say that for more complex web applications, it probably makes sense to use a solution like React or Next.js if you want to build a full stack application, for example. But then again, you can get many things done with just jQuery. And I mean, Peter Levels is the best example for that. He built super successful websites, web services, just with, I think, vanilla PHP and jQuery. So yeah, makes sense to have it up there. I'm not sure if I would have expected it on Stack Overflow, but then again, I found jQuery solutions a couple of years ago still, if I had questions about vanilla JavaScript. So I guess jQuery was always super relevant for Stack Overflow, maybe also because all that strong growth was during the jQuery years, right? So maybe that is also part of the reason. Not sure. Next.js, obviously, so it's the same as with React. AI will often give you Next.js code if you want it or not. And Next.js is, of course, an amazing full-stack framework built on top of React. So yeah, makes sense to see that up there. Express, also pretty interesting because Express.js, it's one of the most fun frameworks that exists out there. It's one of the few frameworks and tools in general, I guess, that are super popular, that are getting used all the time, despite being barely maintained. Now, I actually don't know what the current situation is. Looks like there has been more activity recently, but there have been long stretches where we did not have a lot of activity. Yeah, I mean, you can see it here, and still not a lot of activity. Now, you could argue, and that is probably the reason, it doesn't need a lot of maintenance because it is super stable and so on. But I always found it super funny that Express is getting used everywhere, even though there may be better or faster alternatives, and you could argue that it's not super maintained, but still, it was one of the first Node.js frameworks. It got its #1 spot, and well, it just stuck there. And it is a great framework to this day. I will say that. But if I'm building a REST API, I'll be honest, chances are high that I might be using Express.js for that. And yeah, I know that they launched version 5. I think it's mostly version 4, though. The big change is that handling errors that are thrown inside promises got easier, which is super important because that was always annoying with Express version 4. Okay, yeah, Angular and Vue, as I mentioned, way beyond React. They always have been, but I think AI made that worse. That's my feeling, at least. Django for Python, pretty good framework. Fast API too, though. Laravel, that is surprising. I guess there are not a lot of Laravel developers on Stack Overflow. And I mean, it's the same for WordPress, because WordPress, of course, powers a large portion of the web. But again, on Stack Overflow, it makes sense that there aren't a lot of hardcore WordPress developers, because I would imagine the Stack Overflow community is a bit more elite than that. So that might be the reason. And I guess Laravel, I'm not sure if it really is so small. On Stack Overflow, it seems to be. But Laravel, I mentioned it before, amazing framework. Angular 1, that's funny. Angular 1 being almost as big as Laravel. I mean, we had Angular 2 since 2016. It's almost 10 years of Angular 2. And I know the transition has been hard, and I know there are many people who never really liked Angular 2+. But it's funny that we still have so many Angular 1 devs here in that survey. So many people using Angular 1 still. Which, I guess, again, It's absolutely possible that there still are many websites out there that were built with Angular 1 that are maintained with Angular 1, and where as a developer you have to know Angular 1 therefore, and you have to use it. But it's equally it's equal in usage to Svelte, which is really funny. Astro, here it is. I mentioned before, I'll definitely do a stream on that. Not super popular on Stack Overflow, but extremely popular with me. An amazing framework for building all kinds of websites and web applications, but especially if you're trying to build a content-heavy, maybe static site, and you're not limited to that, but if you want to build such a site, Astro is an amazing framework, I will tell you that, and I will definitely stream it. Okay, let's move on. IDEs. Where's Cursor? So that will, I'm not sure, it will probably not be number 1 next year, but it will be higher, for sure. Do we have Cursor last year? I don't think we have IDEs here. We do. Cursor, do we have Cursor here? No, it's not even in the list. Now it is a solid 6th place. And again, I'm sure that will grow. Visual Studio Code, I guess, will shrink. Visual Studio Code, still a great IDE, but I will say right now, Cursor to me is better. And actually not the IDE. I mean, the IDE is pretty much the same, right? But for me, the main difference is the tab feature by Cursor. The agent mode is great, definitely. And I think it's a bit better than Visual Studio Code's agent mode, but I haven't tried the latter in the last couple of weeks. Maybe they caught up. But the tab feature, I did try that like 1 week ago. And I don't know what the Cursor team did, but even though it can be annoying from time to time and make the wrong suggestions, especially if I have a change and I need to apply that in various places, and it's not a change I can easily do with search and replace, Cursor is so smart at understanding what I'm doing and predicting it basically instantly, and I just have to hit tab, tab, tab. That's one of the biggest features, which is why I like Cursor. So yeah. Cursor, amazing. Notepad++ on number 3. Yeah, that's the elite part about Stack Overflow, which I mentioned. That makes perfect sense if you really consider that to be a more elite kind of user base. I mean, I've never really used Notepad++. Maybe it is the most amazing editor in the world, but I would imagine that VS Code or Visual Studio, if you're doing C++ or C# development and so on, and also all the IntelliJ IDEs. I mean, this is just the idea IDE, but if you take PHP Storm and so on, these are great IDEs too. I would think that they got more users than Notepad++, but maybe I'm wrong, and definitely not on Stack Overflow. Now, I use Vim, by the way, of course, or, well, actually, this is really Vim. Here's NeoVim. I'll be honest, I gave NeoVim a try earlier this year, in January, because around Christmas, early year, I always take that time to dive into new stuff. And I really wanted to get good at Vim, NeoVim. I still have that goal. I see the advantages of it. I will not lie about that. But there were 2 reasons why I quit. One reason really is, as dumb as it might sound, that I definitely am way more productive in Cursor, also because of that tab, tab, tab feature. I was missing that. It's a great feature, which really makes me more productive, I feel like. The other reason is that learning Vim and NeoVim and all these gestures and getting good at them, all these motions, I mean, and getting good at them, it really takes a lot of effort. It's probably worth it, I guess. If you're really good at Vim, NeoVim, you probably are faster. And I mean, like the tab, tab, tab stuff might not matter to you then, or maybe we'll get that there too in the future. I want to get back into it, but I suck at Vim and NeoVim. But at least I can exit out of it now. At least I know how to exit out of Vim. So that's good. That's very good. But yeah. again, kind of makes sense. Like my opinion here just is that we're dealing with a more elite user base. I mean, right? Who's left has to be elite. And here it makes sense to have like Notepad and Vim be up there. And I don't mean that in any bad way, by the way. As I said, I do truly believe that you can be super productive with Vim and NeoVim. I just ain't. The tab feature is just that in Cursor, you get these suggestions like in all IDEs, which you can confirm by hitting tab. And it also tries to predict the next likely edit you might want to make, which can be in a totally different line of code or even in a different file. And for example, if let's say I change an argument in one function in one file, I change the type of that argument, or yeah, I add a new argument, chances are high that it will almost instantly thereafter suggest that I hit tab to be taken to the file where I'm using that function and to automatically adjust the way the function gets called there such that the correct new argument is passed in there. That's the tab feature, which works really well for me. Set, by the way, since I see it here in the list, is an editor I also like quite a lot. Unfortunately, not as good at the tab thing, but Set is such a clean, fast editor. It's an editor which is not a fork of VS Code, which is rare these days, but instead I believe it's written in Rust, again, a language I like, and it's a really fast, clean editor. I'm using it here and there, and as soon as they got the tab down, I might switch. We also see these AI website builders in there. Replit is not in there, I think. But we got Lovable and Bolt. I don't really see those as IDEs. I mean, they are web-based IDEs, but the primary idea is that you can prompt your way to a website or web service. And I always wondered about these sites, who's actually using them? Because I see all these crazy numbers like 100 million annual recurring revenue. But then again, I never see any sites that seem to be live, published, in production, that were built with help of these services. Maybe I'm just missing them. And yeah, on Stack Overflow, they're not super important. Maybe next year, though, we'll see. What do you think about Neo4j and knowledge graph databases? I haven't really worked with any, to be very honest, so I don't have like a strong opinion on them. Not a lot I can say about them, unfortunately. I never tried Cursor, but now I want to. Sorry about that. But yeah, the agent mode, as I said, is good. I use that too. The tab thing is what can really be amazing. And I hope we'll get that in VS Code in the future and in all editors. Because it can also be annoying because it often makes suggestions which you accidentally accept. That can be annoying, but it makes up for all these cases in situations where it just allows you to fly through the code base. Max, don't underestimate WordPress plugin devs jobs growing fast. Yeah, so that's an entirely different ecosystem, like the entire WordPress ecosystem and everything that's related to it with plugins, templates, and so on. Obviously, a huge ecosystem where you can probably earn good money, just totally not my ecosystem. I have almost zero opinions on that. It's been a long time since I last worked with WordPress, but yeah, I know that there are entire huge ecosystems out there, like also with PHP and jQuery. Huge like technologies, which are just totally outside of my bubble and our bubble, maybe. Stack Overflow tags, what's that? Okay. So new categories for technologies added to Stack Overflow. Google Gemini, huh. So I guess it's not ChatGPT because ChatGPT was added a year earlier already. And here we're talking about new categories. No, this entire category is new, sorry. Last 3 years. So why is ChatGPT not in there? Because it's not rising anymore? Because it rose like 2 years ago? I'm not sure. I mean, it makes sense to have like the large language model related stuff in general up there. Just as Brosco wrote, I'm wondering why we got that up there, and yeah, I'm wondering why ChatGPT isn't there. Ollama, amazing, absolutely. Running open large language models locally on your laptop, if it is somewhat capable, is such an amazing thing. I'm using that a lot. I mean, I also created an entire course about that. ACAD link local-LLMs gets you there and gives you a nice discount. And it teaches you how to efficiently work with open models running on your system with Ollama or LM Studio. So yeah, I'm happy to see that here. Tailwind, obviously, the fourth version, the latest version, amazing CSS library. Also, the favorite of all the large language models. So yeah, well, nothing to say about that. I guess it's in there because version 4 was released. RAG, super amazing approach to making large language models more capable by intelligently pulling in more data and embedding that data into prompts to enhance those prompts. I upload recordings of all my live streams here on Maximilian Schwarzmüller Extended. And one of my most popular recordings is this one, where we built an entire RAG system in a live stream. So that might be worth a look. It's totally free on YouTube. Here's UV, that Python package manager, which is just amazing. So good thing to have it here. Pydantic, I guess that is here because now with structured output, which can be delivered by large language models or by, for example, OpenAI's SDK. When using that for using the OpenAI APIs, they are using Pydantic for basically defining the structure of the data you'd like to get and for validating it and so on. So Pydantic, just like Sod, which is not in the list here, have certainly become more important in the age of large language models, where you also might be using those models for generating structured output. SharedCN also, #1 favorite of all the large language models when it comes to building React Next.js applications. C++ 23, I'm not into C++, not a lot I can say about that. Amazon Bedrock is like the service by AWS, which simplifies running open models in the cloud and accessing them through API. I played around with that a bit. Pretty good service for that. Definitely makes it simple to host open models in the cloud and then just pay for the usage, but don't pay a significant extra premium on top of that. So that makes sense. So yeah, Vision OS, yeah, I think it makes sense that it's last. Community platforms, Stack Overflow, #1 in the Stack Overflow survey. Good. GitHub, yeah, sure, GitHub. I mean, why is GitHub not 100%? I'm not sure if we're talking about this as a platform for meeting friends, but if it comes to using it as a platform as a developer to host code, to work on code, to contribute to open source, for example, well, then GitHub should probably be at 100%. YouTube, yeah, I mean, YouTube, in my opinion, is the best social media platform, depending on what you count as a social media platform. It got all the BS you also find on other platforms, but unlike other platforms, YouTube also got a lot of good stuff. And then also for development, of course, you find lots of good resources there. X, good call. In the list, now I will say X is pretty good for me for getting my news related to tech. Sure, I'm in my bubble. I don't get a lot of news out of that, and I got all the BS stuff, all the engagement farming, all the political stuff. X is an is a horrible platform, but it's also one of the best platforms for getting up-to-date news, unfortunately, especially for the tech stuff. Yeah, Reddit. I mean, Reddit will be interesting because just like blogs and in general, all like forums, I feel like people are more and more going to ask directly inside of ChatGPT. And right now it's getting a lot of data out of all the blog posts and of the Reddit discussions. But how will that look like in 2 years? Then we might not have a lot of new blog posts and a lot of activity on Reddit, because if everybody just goes to ChatGPT, the content and the discussions are going to die out, right? So yeah, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, LinkedIn is LinkedIn, with all its strengths and weaknesses. Blue Sky, yeah. Probably also because this is the 2024 survey, and my opinion is that it's the 2025 survey, but it reaches back into the last year. And yeah, we'll see if it's still above 10% next year. Twitch, okay, not that popular amongst Stack Overflow devs. It is what it is. Large language models. Which large language models for AI tools, what a weird way of phrasing this, have you used for development work? So that means like which large language models you've used in Cursor and so on, I guess. So OpenAI's models, Claude, Gemini, more OpenAI. Yeah, well, I mean, that's so weird. Like OpenAI reasoning versus GPT. I mean, like, I'm not sure. I do understand that we have reasoning and non-reasoning models, but I feel like people are just going to use whichever model is best right now, and they don't really care as much if it's reasoning or non-reasoning technically, and we might have only reasoning models in the future anyways. I don't know. Yeah, but okay. It makes sense that Claude is almost first. Well, actually, it's just half of what OpenAI was. I would imagine Claude to climb those ranks because it is especially popular amongst developers, because the Claude models tend to be pretty good at writing code, though in my personal opinion, they're not that much better than the other models, even though some people make you believe that Claude is way better, but in my opinion, they're all pretty close to each other, and every model is capable of spitting out total garbage, and every model is capable of generating quite good code depending on your prompt, your code base, the problem you've been asking for or you're dealing with, and so on. AI assistance is not the same as large language models. They can have different models. Yeah, sure. You can have different models for generating code and answering questions. I'm not sure how often people really switch manually, and I just don't know. That feels like it's changing so fast. It's really hard to capture in a survey, right? But the general trend, I think, is that Claude is pretty popular amongst developers, and then the nuances, if reasoning, non-reasoning, Flash, non-Flash, I'm not sure if that will even be a big thing next year. I hope at some point OpenAI gets rid by their dozens of models, for example, and just has one or maybe two models and intelligently chooses what to do behind the scenes. Code documentation, collaboration tools. Yeah, GitHub, Jira, GitLab, Markdown file, okay. Is Markdown file a service, or are we talking about Markdown files in the sense of a Markdown file? I guess we're talking about Markdown files. Yeah, I guess developers write a lot of Markdown, definitely. Just didn't expect it here in that list, I guess. Definitely expected GitHub to be number one with a big margin. Jira, I personally never used it because, well, I never worked in a big company as a software engineer. Yeah, and not a lot I can say here. I mean, like all these productivity tools, I'll be very honest, I don't really use them. I've played around with a lot of them, but it feels like you just feel productive using them. Like I can spend an entire week setting up Notion, and I did last year. And it was just wasted time in the end for me. I don't doubt that there are people that can be super productive with their super amazing Notion setup and all the templates they're using there. But I also feel like people can spend a lot of stuff on setting up these tools, which they also could have spent on just doing their actual work, which they now planned out in those tools. But yeah. I was wondering if you had an opinion on how to get started with AI. So if you mean like using AI, I would really just use it. What I personally like a lot is using ChatGPT or Gemini or any other large language model in the browser. So as a chatbot for discussing architectures or potential solutions for problems. And then I use Cursor or other tools, Claude Code, whatever you like. You can play around with different tools, but I would recommend Cursor for getting started. And I use these tools to augment my development workflow, so to say. I don't let AI write all the code, but occasionally I'll let Cursor with its agent write a code block, a certain feature, or refactor some code. I use the tap feature all the time. But yeah, I would really just play around with it and get a feeling for it. I would just try to not use it for too much because it's super easy to get sucked into that flow where you let AI write all the code and then you don't understand anything about your code base and suddenly you realize, oh, it's really not that great of a code base. I need to make some changes because I can't easily add a certain feature due to the way the code was structured. And then that is super hard if you don't understand your code base. So yeah, I would just play around with it, but use it for small isolated features or to discuss certain problems. Yeah, I heard that Miro should be pretty good, but yeah, I'm just not that much into those productivity tools. Maybe I should give them another try though. Computer operating systems, Windows, Mac OS. I would have expected Linux to be a bit further up there. So I guess we're talking about systems we're developing for, not necessarily we're developing on, even though the question is what is the primary operating system in which you work? But obviously people are probably not going to use Android for working on that system. You probably don't do all your work on a phone or a tablet, I guess. So they work, and here's Ubuntu. So yeah, I would have expected Android to not really be in there and Linux, Ubuntu to be a bit further up. But in general, of course, no big surprises here. Admired and desired. So that's always an interesting one. So what do we have here? Blue is desired and red is admired. So blue is basically what we want to work with. So what does that mean? I want to get this right. Which programming, scripting, and markup languages have you done extensive development work in over the past year? And which do you want to work in over the next year? So is admired what I have worked in and desired what I want to work in? I'm not 100% sure here. Yeah, I'm also not sure what Android and iOS were doing in that list. To better gauge who want to use a technology, who have used the same. And want to okay, so want to use it or have used it and want to continue. So red is I have used it and I want to continue using it. Blue is I have not used it, but I want to use it. Okay, perfect. So red is have used and want to use. So what's always interesting here, and I think it's always been like this, is that for JavaScript, a lot of people are using it, but as we saw also before, but not everybody wants to continue using it, but they have to, I guess. And then we have things like Rust. And it's fun to see this because, as I said before, My impression has been a different one, that we shifted away from Rust is cool to Rust is horrible. But at least here in the Stack Overflow survey, we can see that a lot of Rust developers still like working with Rust. And it is also still pretty high up when it comes to being desired. So still like 30% of the survey respondents would like to work with Rust. Yeah, assembly is also fun. Like half of people who worked with assembly definitely want to continue doing so, but not a lot of people do want to learn assembly. What else do we have? What is Gleam? Is that this new language? Yeah, it's that new language that came out like 1.5 years ago or so. I vaguely remember that. But it looks like Gleam is super amazing once you work with it. Not a lot of people do want to work with it, or are interested in getting into it, I should say. But the people who did use it, they are excited about it. Same about Elixir. SIG also. And I mean, I heard good things about SIG. It's not super surprising that people who did use SIG want to continue using it. Yeah, it's really not that many technologies and languages that have more than 60%, right? In admired. So people that used it and want to continue using it. Anything else interesting here? Yeah, I mean PHP. I would have guessed that PHP developers are a bit happier with their language, but looks like they aren't. Dart. OCaml. Huh. Yeah, I'm happy that I'm not alone in my Rust judgment. And I'll continue. I like JavaScript. And we have to work with it anyways. Yeah, always a question of how many of those PHP devs are doing WordPress. That's of course correct. So databases. Yeah, everybody who worked with Postgres likes it. Same for SQLite. Pretty good numbers here. And a decent chunk of people that want to get into SQLite. So I'm happy to see that up there because, as I mentioned before, SQLite, I really can only recommend diving into it, or I mean, there's not a lot of diving into it to do. I can recommend considering it for using it as the main database of new projects because it is amazing and super simple to manage and set up. What's interesting here? Welkey or Welkey is essentially like the open source Redis, because there have been some changes to the Redis license, I think, which made it a bit more restrictive. So people forked Redis before the license change, and that now is Welkey. And it makes sense that it's pretty popular amongst the people that switched to it, because it is essentially like the open source free alternative to the now evil Redis, you could say. Supabase being relatively popular. I mean, Supabase is also a thing that is recommended by large language models quite frequently, or that is also particularly easy to integrate. And I mean, like all these website builders like Lovable and Bolt, I think they also use Supabase very often or always as a default. So that makes sense. Oh, not a lot of Microsoft Access fans, unfortunately. Is Pocketbase that free open Firebase alternative? Not sure. Not a lot of Oracle fans, or could be better, I should say. Interesting. Cloud. So people that use Docker tend to like it. That's good. I also like it. I mean, Docker can be quite complex, but it also is quite simple to get started with once you get the hang of it. So makes sense. AWS, I mean, AWS, it's better than I would have guessed, because AWS can be super complex. So it wouldn't have been a huge surprise to me if it would have been less admired, if more people that used it don't want to use it. But yeah, looks like it's fine. Vite, definitely still popular, because Vite is amazing. It's really fast. Lots of features, and has become pretty much the de facto standard to some extent for modern, new JavaScript-based projects. Um, I mean, some of these things are weird, like package managers. I mean, yeah, npm can be slow, so I for example switched to bun. Um, but I'm not sure if I could say, yeah, I want to work with npm next year, or yeah, I used cargo for Rust and I want to continue using it. I mean, yeah, of course I will. Especially for Rust, cargo is like the package manager. So that's a bit weird. Do we have UV in there though? We should. I mean, we got pip. Am I blind? Oh, it's cloud development. We probably have, or yeah. Yeah, we had it here for the Stack Overflow tags. Okay, let's continue. Web frameworks and technologies. React, only half of people admire it, but of course it still is like the number one thing as we saw before, and yeah, you're going to use it anyways because all the large language models suggested. UV like 3D graphics artists work with. No, UV, not UV in like in UV maps, but UV is just a Python package manager, just like pip. I know UV is also a term from like tools like Blender and general 3D modeling for UV maps, but here it has nothing to do with that. Didn't Bun release like last year? I think it was like 2 years ago, but yeah, it is relatively new. But you can use Bun as an alternative to Node.js, and it is pretty fast and has lots of cool features built in and is pretty much compatible with Node.js. Like for, I guess, 99% of things it is compatible, and you can also use it as an alternative to NPM, and then it's way faster than NPM, which is why I'm using it for that. And I'm also using it as an alternative to Node.js in many cases. Yeah, Node.js also pretty much the same as React. Next.js, less than half of people that used it are happy using it again, if I read that correctly. Svelte is like that thing, if you remember before, not a lot of people used Svelte. It was only around 7% of respondents. But of the people that are using it, they are loving it. they are loving it. Yeah. Yeah, Angular 1, not that popular. And I mean, as I said before, Angular 1 is super old. I think the only people that are still working with it are the people that have to work with it because they're working in a company that still uses Angular 1. And I totally understand that you maybe don't love that situation. But also in general, like we can see here, WordPress, jQuery. I guess there are people that do like working with these technologies, that make good money working with these technologies. They just don't seem to be on Stack Overflow. Please a word about cursor rules. Well, cursor rules are the thing which I do add. I'm just not sure how helpful they really are. I try to like describe the general code style I want to use or things cursor often gets wrong. I try to put those things into rules so that I don't constantly have to correct cursor. But I also find it annoying to draft a lot of rules all the time to work around the shortcomings of cursor, including some rules that you wouldn't need for a human, but you do need for cursor, unfortunately. And then sometimes I feel like it's not following the rules, even if I explicitly include them in a prompt. Maybe I'm just writing bad rules. I'm not sure if we'll still be writing rules in 1 or 2 years, because I would expect large language models to kind of get better, and also for cursor and these tools to get better to behind the scenes give cursors on better instructions to closer follow our code styles and avoid certain things. Who svelte it, dealt it. Loving it. Development IDEs, people like Visual Studio Code. Cursor not that popular. I wonder how that will look like next year. Because I will say cursor is not that kind of magic some people try to tell you it is, but it is a good IDE. I will also say though, if Visual Studio Code would get that tab, tab, tab thing right, which I love so much, as you know, I would probably switch back. Now I do, yeah, NeoVim, that is 100% what I would expect. Vim lovers or NeoVim lovers stay NeoVim lovers. And yeah, I think NeoVim is probably amazing if you're good at it. So yeah, no surprise there. Anything else noteworthy? Oh, Eclipse. I think Eclipse was one of the first IDEs I worked with many years ago. It was horrible, I think, if I recall correctly. Yeah, Windsurf. It's a weird IDE. It's essentially like Cursor. I briefly tried it for a month. I found Cursor to be a bit better. And I feel like Windsurf, I don't know anybody who's using Windsurf, but some people seem to be. Set, good call, the chat. I mentioned it before, an editor I really like a lot. So fast, so clean. I would expect that number to be a bit higher, maybe next year, because it's still a relatively new editor. They're still adding more features to it all the time. But yeah, Set is definitely a great editor. Yeah, these tags, yeah, large language models. I mean, it's a love-hate relationship, I think. I guess a decent chunk of developers could very well live without large language models. But now that we have them, using them can, of course, be helpful. I mean, I guess everybody uses them all the time because they have their merits. No news there. When will you step away from beginner courses and make something for intermediate advanced course? Well, the problem is I tried some more advanced stuff and it just doesn't sell good enough. And in the end, I make what people buy. And I would have to sell advanced courses at such a high price point that it's unlikely that people would buy it. And especially on Udemy, it's impossible because Udemy has like this low price policy and all that stuff. So I could, of course, sell it on my own platform. But yeah, whenever I tried it, it was just not worth the effort, unfortunately. Yeah, and good thing what BDSL said. What I tried instead, or what I always kind of did, is I tried to make my courses more comprehensive and pack some advanced content in there so that you can, of course, also just skip the beginner content and go straight to the advanced content. Astro is pretty neat for beginners, should be high for desired. Yeah, Astro is amazing. If Set crashes, you can say Set's dead, baby. Yeah, that's true. Is that Pulp Fiction? I think it is, right? Have you tried Rider as an IDE? No, I haven't. Community platforms, unsurprisingly, Stack Overflow, quite popular and quite desired here. GitHub, yeah, YouTube. So it's, yeah, no, essentially the same as before. I mean, Blue Sky, yeah, I guess the 10 people that are still on Blue Sky, they like it. So yeah, makes sense. But only 7 of them like it. So next year, it'll only be 7. Large language models, yeah, that will change all the time, obviously. Like, you use whatever is currently best or feels best to you. Yeah, Blue Sky higher than X. No surprise there. I mean, X is that horrible platform I, for example, unfortunately just have to use because for me, it is one of the best places to get my news, as I mentioned before. Code documentation collaboration tools. People like writing Markdown. And I mean, yeah, it is good. It's just so fun to have like Markdown file in that list. But Yeah, Markdown is a good format for documenting. Obviously, no surprises there, nothing new there. GitHub is a pretty good platform. People not too fond of Asana. I don't even know Monday.com. What else? Trello, Miro. I mean, Miro, I heard a lot of good things about it. It's a bit surprising that it's not really very admired. Yeah, I mean, like JetBrains having all these dedicated IDEs, I always also found that a bit annoying, especially if you, for example, worked on a PHP project and you also had JavaScript in there, which you have in most projects, I guess. Then you could either use PHP Storm for both, or you could kind of use PHP Storm and WebStorm for the same project for different parts of the project. So yeah, I'm a big fan of having one IDE, one editor like Visual Studio Code or NeoVim or Cursor or SAT or whatever it is, and have that and add plugins and have that work with all the parts. I always like that more. And yeah, I'm not sure if they can switch. I mean, they have all these editors now, but having one editor that does it all in a good way, yeah, I think I would prefer that too. Do they have one IDE that does it all? Or just one package that gives you all the IDEs? It's called IntelliJ Ultimate. Ah, okay. Okay. I'm not. Did they always have that? At least they didn't have it like 7 years ago, I hope. Or I did. Or it was way more expensive. I don't know. Or I was just dumb and I unnecessarily made it more complex than I needed to do it. So, that's looking fancy. What do we have here? Knowing that developers want to use something is only half of the story. These charts show the technologies developers want to use next year aggregated by the technologies they already use. So I could say people are using JavaScript and next year they want to use Go. So 5,000 people who use JavaScript want to use Go. Remember, we had 50,000 respondents. So 10% of all respondents, which are not all JavaScript. Oh no, here we have 32,000. So 1/6 of all respondents, which not necessarily all use JavaScript though, want to use Go. So lots of JavaScript people switching to Go or interested in Go, I should say. Yeah, TypeScript, that makes sense. So yeah, that's, I'm not sure if I really want to go through that. If it's that insightful, it's a bit hard to read, to be very honest. Yeah, MySQL to PostgreSQL is not that surprising. It's a beautiful chart, though, I will say that. So NPM people want to use Kubernetes. Okay. Okay, AWS people want to use Docker. Yeah, it's good that IntelliJ Ultimate exists then. I would believe it's way more expensive then, or why would people not use it? Or it can do it all, but it's unfortunately not as good as the individual IDEs. That's of course also possible. Express people want to use Node.js. That makes a lot of sense. And want to use React. Yeah. So it's kind of obvious what we see here. Vim users switching to Visual Studio Code. I would have expected Vim users to switch to NeoVim, but no. Some are switching to VS Code or are interested in VS Code. Okay. Well, I'll just skip through those. Next, AI. Well, this is a long survey. I will not be able to go through that entirely. And not at all, I should say. AI tools in the development process. I use AI tools daily. That number will be higher next year. That will be higher next year. I guess it should be close to 100%. Because that does not mean that you generate all the code with it. It just means like you're using it for some aspect of your work or in any other way. And yeah, I definitely use AI daily. When I work, I use AI. Not in every second, but I use it a lot. And I guess that will be the case for most people next year. So how do people think about AI tools? It has decreased, they're saying. And I mean, actually, I'd say these tools got better, but maybe they didn't meet the expectation of people. And especially like 1 and 2 years ago, that entire AI stuff, of course, was way more magical than it may be now. Now we know it exists. We know what it can do. We saw all the exciting examples. We saw that it doesn't always live up to the expectations. And yeah, still, it is super helpful. But I guess it makes sense that the sentiment is now a bit less for all these reasons, because it's less magical and more of a daily tool now. Now we're just all waiting to see, will it replace us entirely or will it not do that? I don't think it will. Accuracy of AI tools. So highly trust, you should not be in that group. You should not be in that group. You should be in that group. These two. You should trust it somewhat, which kind of also means that you somewhat distrust it, right? That would be the right way of doing it. Yeah, thanks, by the way, for all the explanations regarding Ultimate. I mean, I will not switch to it, to be honest, right now, but I had a totally wrong idea of what they offered. So yeah, thank you very much for clarifying that, BDSL. AI tools' ability to handle complex tasks. Yeah, absolutely in line with what I would say. Definitely good for specific tasks. Actually depends. A task can be complex and AI can be good at it. You have no guarantee, but it can be good at it. But if a task is complex and big, it will be bad. If a task is complex and specific, then AI can achieve good results. That is my experience, at least. Yeah, so searching for answers, also for me, discussing with AI, discussing different solutions or possible approaches for problems. That is something I also do a lot, because I find AI very valuable for that, for bouncing ideas back and forth. Now, obviously, if you have colleagues that are on the same skill level as you or on a higher skill level, you can, and you will probably, discuss such things with them. But even then, I guess AI can bring in some additional perspectives or ideas. But if you don't have such colleagues, and I don't, then AI can be a great partner to discuss problems. And I know I'm not talking to a thinking entity, but nonetheless, it can be really valuable and can help you come up with good solutions if you have something like an AI tool to discuss potential solutions. So besides generating code and tap, discussing problems and solutions with AI is a good use case for me. AI workflow and tool satisfaction. Respondents who said they are currently using mostly AI tools to complete tasks are highly satisfied with and frequently using AI. So people that use a lot of AI are also very happy with it. So not a lot of people are using it for writing code, but those who are very happy. Is that how I read it? So the vibe coders like it. I mean, again, depends on what problem you're trying to tackle, which kind of code you're trying to generate. I'm also happy with a lot of code it's writing for me, but definitely not with all the code. Doesn't AI usually agree with you? Well, if you ask AI, hey, is this the solution I should use? The chances are you will get a, yeah, that is absolutely what you should do. But if you just ask it for, hey, I get this and this problem, what do you think of it? Or which approaches could I take? Suggest 2 possible solutions. If you ask for something like this, it will give you possible solutions. And then you can, of course, ask, but what about that? And then it will say, you're absolutely right. But then you can also say, but back to your solutions, your suggestions, how could we combine those with my suggestions? So obviously, you have to kind of steer it in a certain way. You have to be aware of the fact that it tends to always agree with you, but that does not mean that you can't use it to come up with alternative ideas or bounce ideas back and forth. It's just not like with a human. It's a human without a strong opinion, but nonetheless a human with different ideas, and that's the interesting part. AI tool frustrations, AI solutions that are almost right but not quite. I mean, that is the big thing, right? So we probably have all been there, that we used AI for something and it gave us a solution that looked amazing, that maybe even worked, but then it had some flaws, or maybe it wasn't able to get the solution just right. It's often like 80, 90% there, but the missing 20 or 10%, unfortunately, that's often the difficult part. And unless AI reliably gets that right, it won't be a good replacement for developers. And that is also why I'm a strong believer that AI is an amazing tool we should all use, but will not replace us anytime soon. And yeah, AI will also, of course, frequently fail and produce code that has no chance of working, or incomplete code, or spaghetti code. I'm using it in a pretty big project where it often gives me code that does not fit into the code base, that ignores the code style I'm using in other parts, even though I told it to use the same code style. So it is like a constant battle. That's what I meant earlier. I'm trying to find the balance. It can be helpful for small, specific problems. It can also fail at those. But it's so easy to ask it for too much, or to let it do too much and use it too much, and then you often end up with code that is then I would say you often end up with code that costs you more time than AI saved you. So you have to spend more time getting into that code and fixing it than you potentially saved by AI writing it. That's my feeling. So it is a balance that is super hard to get right. So why would people ask humans? Because you don't trust AI answers. You get ethical or security concerns. You want to fully understand something, best practices. Yeah, that's all pretty valid, I'd say. Yeah, I mean, obviously, no big news here. Humans have a lot of skills computers don't have, and these AI models, these large language models, they're not thinking. That is super important. They're not thinking. Also, the reasoning models, not thinking. They're generating tokens based on all the context you gave them, based on all the text you gave them. They're just completing sequences, and that unlocks a lot of things, but they're not thinking. They don't have emotions. They don't have empathy. They don't have experience, and they're not thinking at all. So that's important. Vibe coding. Yeah, only a small amount of vibe coders here, which is no surprise. It's Stack Overflow, and I'm also not into vibe coding. I don't believe that makes sense. Yeah, well, the AI agents part. Everything's an AI agent, right? If something uses AI, it is an AI agent. But unfortunately, I gotta go. I ran out of time. I mean, that survey is still super long. Let's see. We were here, AI agents, and we got so much more. I think we got the interesting stuff, like most popular technologies, admired, desired. That's the stuff I was most interested in. So like technology purchases is not really something I'm super interested in here. salary. I mean, always fun to see what people earn, but that's just describing like who participated in the survey, so like the demographics. Like AI agents might be interesting, but then again, it's such a buzzword and really more and more becoming of a buzzword and a thing. I guess we'll see more in a year, if that really is. Yeah, it depends on your definition. Like everything's an AI agent if you want it to be one. But yeah, I gotta go. Thank you all for joining.